A brass phonograph sang its depressing tune for the three souls within the vicinity of the dimly lit bedroom. Aldous, Simmons, and Helena sat around a mahogany table, playing a late-night game of poker.
Raise.
Helena smirked, dropping her shiny gold and sapphire bracelet into the center of the table. Both men looked at her, and then back to each other. A crocodile grin was plastered widely across the devious blonde's face, almost unnaturally contorted. Aldous pondered his next move carefully. He'd played a lot of poker, and he considered himself adept when it came to spotting a bluff. It was clear to him that Helena was not bluffing.
Fold.
He admitted defeat, slamming his cards to the table with a loud sigh. Helena licked her lips in conquest.
Well, that's one. What about you, Vlad? Are you in or out?
I'm not about to lose any more money to you, Helena.
Suit yourself, sweetie.
She watched as Simmons revealed his hand.
Yes, that is a good hand.
4 of a kind. Beat that.
With pleasure, Vlad.
Helena spread her cards just below her burgundy lips.
Straight flush,
she whispered huskily.
Damnation, woman!
The Lord shouted, watching as she teasingly replaced her bracelet before gathering up the rest of the payout waiting for her on the table. She waggled a finger at him.
A gentleman never swears.
Simmons looked away, crossing his arms.
Well, as you know, I'm no gentleman.
Only too well, only too well.
She laughed.
That was fun, boys. Fancy another round?
I can't afford another round with you.
Aldous answered.
Honestly, Helena, one would almost think that you were a robot or something, the way you win every single time.
What can I say? I'm just that good.
She shrugged with false innocence.
Speaking of good, you really outdid yourself with those metal bings. The city didn't know what hit it.
Yes, it's only a matter of time now, until we find that troublesome daughter of yours, Vlad.
Who would have thought that Garrett was in the center of town just waiting for us all this time?
Simmons mused.
How were you able to track that thief down so quickly anyway?
Oh, it was quite simple.
Helena pursed her lips.
You see, the book Garrett stole from the ancient keeper library for Aldous here contains some forgotten knowledge that I knew I should program into my metal beings. The keepers used to train assassins called enforcers. The enforcers were an elite group of keepers who were sent to complete only the most dangerous of tasks. By using glyph magic, they were able to augment their awareness and develop the ability to use telepathy. This ability also allowed them to be able to track down other keepers, as our dear little thief can more than attest to.
I don't get it. What does all this riffraff have to do with your latest creations, Helena?
Aldous stroked his woolly salt and pepper beard.
Men.
She rolled her eyes.
Using the book he stole for you, I was able to break down the magical properties of the recorded glyph spell into a mathematical formula to be programmed into my metal beings. Basically, they now have the power to track Garrett whenever and wherever necessary.
But how?
Simmons questioned.
I just told you. Garrett used to be a keeper.
Helena's eyes burned a fiery hazel.
Which brings me to my next bit of news. I know where Guinevere is.
Her announcement almost caused Simmons to topple out of his chair.
What? Where?
Why, isn't it obvious?
The blonde giggled mockingly at her lover.
The thief has her. If you want her back, if you want to find Garrett, then you're gonna be requiring the aid of my metal beings.
What is it that you need me to do, Helena?
Simmons leaned forward on the table.
Let my metal beings tear apart the city so that they can find Garrett and Guinevere.
I don't know, Helena. That's a tall order. You've already gotten me in enough trouble when you helped Aldous' Graven torch the city last week.
Helena stood and walked over to Simmons, shaking her hips as she did so. Wrapping her arms around his neck, she traced her fingernail up his neck to his ear. The Lord shuddered.
Ooh, don't be like that, baby. Northcrest is old and crotchety.
And also dead.
Aldous butted in. Simmons stared at him, whilst Helena merely grinned her sadistic smile.
What? When did this happen?
You really don't get out much, do you?
Helena chided.
During the fire, I had some of my men riot on his manor. He had something that belonged to me, and I desperately needed it back. The old coot never saw it coming.
You know we're supposed to keep each other informed about things like that. Nice of you two to tell me.
Simmons retorted, perturbed.
We thought it would be a nice surprise.
Helena twirled a strand of her hair around her fingers.
Let's just forget all about that mean old man for now. After all, his undoing means that you're one step closer to gaining control over the entire city. All you need to do in order to achieve that power is help me. If I get what I want, then you get what you want, Vlad.
Guinevere finished tying back her ruby hair into a wavy ponytail and fastened the belt around her waist. There was a rabbit fur pouch attached to one of the 4 silver loops, which contained her readied spore grenades. She straightened her knee-high leather boots and prepared herself mentally for the night ahead. It was here, the moment that she had been training for over the last several months. Part of her test was to pick the location where her mission would take place. Guinevere had chosen to target the head building of a rich industrialist named Richard Mason. Mason had a payment scheduled to be sent out to the city sheriff, a bribe to keep them quiet over the many shifty dealings he kept with underground mercenaries, as well as the severe mistreatment and lack of pay of his workers. The vigilante in training planned on taking the bribe money and giving it instead back to its rightful owners, the poor of this city. Understandably, Garrett didn't like the idea of Guinevere working in such close proximity to the sheriff. He was a wanted man, and his little apprentice wasn't exactly being ignored. But since the job in question would take place in the foundries, rather than the city watch station, the thief decided to allow it. But he would be keeping a very close eye on her. Mason Industries, 11 p.m. Guinevere's body was silent, her eyes like that of a great cat waiting in the shadows to strike. A large, armor-clad guard lumbered past, humming to himself in an upbeat, yet obviously bored manner. The young woman clutched at her fur pouch, ready to throw one of her grenades, if necessary. Fortunately, the guard ventured past without so much as casting his eyes into the bushes where she lay in wait. It seemed to Guinevere that there wasn't a single member of the city watch who took their job seriously. She sighed, glad nonetheless that he had passed her over. Slinking out of the brush and closer to the main building, she continued her infiltration. Guinevere unfolded a rather detailed floor plan that Garrett had somehow managed to get his hands on. According to the map, she had just passed through the front yard of the rendering part of the factory, and the main building was still quite a ways ahead. She would need to make it up to the second floor, and then sneak into Mason's office where the bribe was no doubt being kept for deposit with the sheriff, come morning. Guinevere stared at the map in her trembling hands, her face seemingly lost.
Let's see. If I go through this door, then I should end up in the back room, where all the repair tools are located.
She reasoned quietly to herself.
From there, I could ascend the stairway that would be on the right, then head up to Mason's office. Seems simple enough.
She grinned, folding up the parchment and replacing it back within her pack. Garrett glowered in quiet disdain as he watched his girl dash across the brightly lit courtyard, causing one of the watcher's Alsatians to go off.
Taffing girl. If I've told her once, I've told her 1,000 times.
He frowned. With that, the disappointed thief leapt from his hiding place atop the brick wall. Guinevere's control of tonight's heist was now over. The factory's iron doors eased open with a low creak. Guinevere tiptoed inside, scanning the room cautiously for any signs of trouble. From behind, the door suddenly closed by itself, and the young woman found herself engulfed in darkness. She nearly screamed as a pair of hands found her mouth and waist. Instantly, she was spun around by an unexpected strength. The next thing Guinevere realized, she was staring up once more into the domineering, judging eyes of her thief. One glimpse into his infuriated expression was enough for her to know that she had already failed her test.
What the hell did you think you were doing running out into the open like that?
Guinevere pushed his hand from her mouth, her expression twisted with both embarrassment and anger.
You were following me?
Of course I was following you. This was a test, not a solo job. Did you honestly think that you were ready to do this on your own yet?
Yes, I figured that's what all the training was for.
She snapped, catching Garrett off guard. Guinevere didn't get mad often, and it still both amused and surprised him when she did. And she wasn't over yet. Crossing her arms, the little nymph continued her tirade.
And for your information, Garrett, I had it all under control. I'm gonna head through...
The dog saw you. He started barking after you ran out into the streetlights.
He was just saying hi!
Guinevere retorted. Garrett gawped at her.
Saying...
He threw up his arms and shook his head in disbelief.
Guinevere, listen. That dog wasn't your friend. He's a trained mutt ordered by the city watch to keep a lookout for intruders. Like you. Those dogs are vicious, Guinevere. The watch actually sharpen their fangs and train them to go for the throat.
Oh, come on, Garrett. I'm a forest nymph, remember? No animal would ever hurt me.
Guinevere proclaimed, oblivious to the peril she'd put herself in.
Light and speed are your enemy. Getting somewhere faster is often the easiest way to die.
Garrett countered. Spotting an open window, he peered out and discovered the guard from earlier, sure enough, looking around the canine's cage.
And by the way, it looks as if your new friend just sold you out.
Guinevere peeked out, almost in disbelief.
Where'd he go, boy? Where'd he go?
The guard spoke in baby talk to the hulking tan and coal-colored beast within.
Well, whoever it was, they couldn't have gone far.
An approaching female guard added, tossing the dog a strip of rancid meat. She then began issuing commands.
All right, you continue to patrol the yard.
Right away, Mum.
I'll take checkers here and infiltrate the warehouse over yonder. Mason said there was a fat sack of loot locked up in his safe tonight, and I'm not about to let some random thief make off with it. If those workers talk to the wrong people, we could lose more than just our jobs.
Garrett's eyes narrowed as the female guard pulled out a 6-foot leather leash and attached it to the Alsatian's collar. As she opened the cage for the dog, the thief began to move away from the window and into the confines of darkness, pushing his apprentice along with him.
Go.
He stared blankly ahead as Guinevere's legs clumsily fought to keep up.
But Garrett,
Now!
He commanded in a voice resembling a deep growl. He had been through enough of her pleading and whining for one night. The two had just reached the winding metal stairway when the thief heard the metal door slam. Quickly, he moved Guinevere underneath and waited for the guard and her canine to make their rounds. Time slowed to an excruciating crawl, and the footsteps were only growing louder. Garrett tensed, holding both Guinevere and his breath. It wasn't the she-guard he was concerned about. It was her companion. While they could sometimes present a bit of a challenge to evade, at least the bluecoats didn't have the acute nose of a canine. And the seasoned thief was well aware that Checkers, as he was affectionately named, had already picked up on their scent. Guinevere was seething with unpleasantness at being caught in such an obvious mistake. The determination and eager thrill that had existed within her even minutes ago was now all but vanquished. Now she felt stumped, defeated, utterly useless. That was, until those foreboding voices began again. The little nymph fought harder than ever before to silence them. She desired nothing more than to be human, to be normal, to be with Garrett. And normal, good girls did not use magic. Then, a shocking realization caused her body to shudder with a frigid chill. Normal good girls also did not steal. They were tailors, maids, mothers and cooks. They could even be battle-hardened warriors, such as the female guard that pursued them now. But they were not thieves. For the first time since meeting Garrett, Guinevere gave him a questionable stare. He noticed, but refused to say anything. Instead, Garrett watched as the dog came closer to their hiding spot beneath the stairway. Checker's nose was making loud, sniffing noises now. He was closing in. Again, the voices screamed at Guinevere, and again, she held her hands to her ears and tried desperately to ignore them. But she couldn't. Garrett looked around anxiously. He knew that he had to get past that damned dog. Somehow. Time was running out. Looking up, He saw the guard stick her head out and look around. This was his chance. Taking out his blackjack, he swung the weapon into her face. The guard barely had time to yell out as the nymph's vines sprinted up from the stone floor, crumbling heavy brick to dust in their wake.
Guinevere, what are you?
Garrett began, but was rendered speechless as a thick green vine grabbed the injured guard up by the throat and threw her out the open doorway. Checkers barked and ran off after his screaming mistress. The thief was dumbstruck. His mouth gaped as Guinevere summoned another vine out of the ground. This one weaved its way through the iron handles of the factory's double doors, binding them shut.
Come on! Let's just get this over with!
She called to her teacher, already rounding the metal stairway. Garrett gathered himself and followed. Questions and punishment would have to wait. For now, getting out of the building safe and alive was all that mattered. And thanks to his pupil's latest show of recklessness, that wasn't going to be easy anymore.